Well, pack it in, folks. We're about to say goodbye to the Guardians of the Galaxy. This version of them, that is. But while we may never find ourselves prancing around on a desolate planet singing along to Fox on the Run with Star-Lord ever again, Marvel still has plenty of other spacefaring adventurers. So let's take a look at them and see who could become the next Guardians of the Galaxy. Now, we've already met the intergalactic police force known as the Nova Corps through the Guardians movies, but we have yet to meet any of its more famous members. The original Nova was Richard Rider, who, in a move very reminiscent of the Green Lantern, was the chosen successor of a dying Nova Corps member named Roman Day. After spending some time on Earth as the superhero known as Nova the Human Rocket, he eventually moved on to bigger cosmic adventures and ended up forming the Guardians of the Galaxy alongside Peter Quill. But there is also a second well-known Nova named Sam Alexander. Sam got his Nova helmet from his father Jesse, who was himself a former Nova. As it turns out, Jesse was actually a friend of Gamora and Rocket, who then proceeded to teach Sam how to use the Nova helmet, allowing him to become a superhero on his own. At the moment, a project featuring Richard is in development, but regardless of whether they'd settled for him or Alexander, Nova is long overdue for an MCU appearance.
Captain Marvel. Now there's a name just about everyone in the superhero community has used. Before Carol Danvers, there was Mar-Vell, a Kree war hero who was left on Earth after getting into a fight with his corrupt superiors. He then took on the name of Walter Lawson, started a relationship with Carol Danvers, and became the superhero known to Earth as Captain Marvel. Now, Mar-Vell was never actually a member of the Guardians, but many of his successors were. Aside from Carol, there was Mar-Vell's daughter Phyla-Vell, who did at one point go by Captain Marvel and has been a member of the Guardians. The same thing goes for another Kree super soldier from an alternate universe named Novar, who took on the mantle before eventually rebranding himself Marvel Boy and joining the Young Avengers. Are you confused yet? Good, and so am I. And keep in mind, I'm giving you the abridged version here. I didn't even bring up Genisville or the Skrull. My point is that if the MCU wants a Captain Marvel on the new Guardians team, then there's a whole lot of them to choose from. And while we're on the subject of humans who find themselves wielding phenomenal cosmic powers, we can't forget about Wendell Vaughn, Quasar. Wendell was originally a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent who was considered too soft to be in the field. However, when the villainous organization AIM attacked S.H.I.E.L.D. in order to steal a set of powerful armbands known as the Quantum Bands, Wendell put those same bands to good use and defended the base with his newfound powers. Now given proper field training, Wendell became Quasar and eventually upgraded from Earthbound superhero to Protector of the Universe, after which he got involved with the Guardians of the Galaxy. Later, another S.H.I.E.L.D. agent named Evelyn Kincaid was given the Quantum Bands by an otherwise retired Wendell Vaughn and became the new Quasar. And since they have the ability to switch places if they bang the Quantum Bands together, Wendell and Evelyn are technically both members of the Guardians at the same time. Oh, and just to make it even harder to keep track, Phyla-Vell was also called Quasar at one point. Man, does anybody want to help me make a flowchart? Here's someone who's been hinted at time and time again, but has yet to show his face on screen. Adam Warlock. Adam Warlock is a godlike artificial being created by the High Evolutionary in order to save his homegrown planet called Counter-Earth from the Magus, who was actually an evil future version of Adam himself. That must have led to some interesting therapy sessions. Over time, the immensely powerful hero also came into possession of the Soul Gem and became an archenemy of none other than Thanos, going so far as to create a super team called the Infinity Watch, all to protect the Infinity Stones from him and others like him. Well, that and having Gamora as his love interest probably didn't earn him any favors with the Mad Titan either. Considering we've already seen Adam's cocoon and met his sister Ayesha in other Marvel movies, there's plenty of ways to bring him into the MCU, even if the Infinity Gems do appear to have been destroyed. The oddly specific role of honorary god member of the Guardians used to belong to Thor. But with his new commitments to his adopted daughter Love and the upcoming disbanding of the current Guardians, as per James Gunn's word, someone has to take his spot on the new team. And why not have it be his rival, Hercules? Once he's settled his beef with Thor in whatever movie he shows up in next on account of the whole threw a lightning bolt at my dad thing, there's no good reason Herc shouldn't get to go on some superhero adventures of his own. I mean, he's been around in the comics for a while, and he's basically an even more boisterous version of Thor. And it's not like the Olympian doesn't have any connections to the Guardians in the comics. After all, they did rescue him when he got captured by the other Greek gods who had been reborn as evil Dark Olympians, and eventually helped him exile them out of reality. That sure was nice of them. Speaking of Thor-adjacent characters, we do have a more alien potential Thunder God replacement, namely Beta Ray Bill. Belonging to a race known as Corbinites, whose homeworld was raised by longtime Thor enemy Surtur, Bill originally came to Earth in search of powerful weaponry that could help him free his homeworld. Stumbling across Thor and taking a hold of Mjolnir, the two were initially at odds, at least until Odin agreed to help Bill out since Mjolnir had proven him worthy. As a result, a new weapon was forced for him to carry, and that weapon was Stormbreaker. Bill later joined the Guardians in order to protect Gamora from the Dark Guardians, and we'll get to those guys later, don't worry. So he definitely has a connection to the team, even if an MCU adaptation would likely be quite different. Especially since at the moment both Stormbreaker and Mjolnir are in Thor and Love's possession, and I highly doubt either of them are willing to give up their weapons. But still, I do know that a lot of longtime fans would be very happy to see the old horseface on the big screen. Even the most unexpected characters can sometimes find themselves members of superhero teams. Like, say, Firelord here. Formerly a Nova Corps member named Peter Quill, Firelord became the herald of the planet-eating Galactus in exchange for knowledge of what happened to his friend Gabriel Lan, who Galactus then revealed that he had turned into another herald named Airwalker right before transforming Pyrrhus into the hothead that we know today. I would say that he should have thought this deal through a little bit more, but with a name like Pyrrhus, something like this was bound to happen sooner or later. Anyway, using the power cosmic to become an avatar of fire and track down worlds for the big guy to eat, Firelord spent a lot of time as a villain in the Marvel Universe, until he was eventually freed from Galactus' service. He then eventually joined the Guardians of the Galaxy, that is to say the original Guardians of the Galaxy, who were a group of freedom fighters from the 31st century, on an alternate Earth that is. And for extra fun, these guys were first introduced in the comics back in 1968, which is a whole 6 years before the debut of the villainous Firelord from Earth 616. Yeah, comic book timelines are fun like that. For years now, Peter Quill has served as the token human everyman among his alien allies, functioning as a tether for the audience to latch onto as they travel the galaxy. So if a new team is to form, we need a new one of those. And the best candidate for that might just be Jack Flag. Jack was introduced in the 90s as a young man inspired by Captain America's example to become a superhero. When he fought back against the Superhero Registration Act during the First Civil War and was imprisoned, he then led a revolt in that same prison when it was attacked by Blastar, and eventually found himself teleported to outer space, where he then joined the Guardians of the Galaxy, since he felt he couldn't go back to Earth as a wanted man. What makes Jack a potentially interesting Star-Lord replacement is not his connection to Captain America though, or even the fact that he and Peter were on the same team at one point. It's because he hates cosmic stuff, and considers himself to be an Earthbound street-level hero who is way out of his league. He could potentially make an interesting contrast to Peter's wide-eyed sense of wonder about the universe, and maybe set up a more cynical sense of humor going forward. I would definitely love to see that. As one of the oldest alien civilizations in Marvel, the Shi'ar Empire is full of strange and colorful characters, some of which have found their way to the Guardians of the Galaxy roster at one point or another. And one of the most prominent of these is the leader of the Shi'ar Imperial Guard, Gladiator. With his flying brick power set, Gladiator is essentially the Shi'ar's take on Superman. I mean, just look at him. He looks like Clark Kent got really into punk rock in the 80s. It's even to the point where he took his name from the novel that supposedly inspired Superman to begin with. And his real name is Kalark, for Pete's sake. But this is where the similarities end. While Superman is an altruistic, all-loving superhero, Gladiator is much more of an Imperial attack dog, willing to carry out any orders given to him by the Shi'ar Empire. This includes joining the Dark Guardians in order to assassinate Gamora, who was suspected to be possessed by Thanos. Although thankfully they did eventually join forces with the regular Guardians in order to find a somewhat less murdery solution. Since we're talking about a new generation of Guardians anyway, we might as well introduce one of the members' children, like Drax's daughter, Moondragon. You see, in the comics, Drax used to be a human man named Arthur Douglas who was killed by Thanos when he, his wife, and his daughter, Heather, spotted his spacecraft in flight while on a family trip. Thanos' father, the Eternal known as Mentor, didn't like this and stepped in to fix things. With the help of another Eternal named Kronos, they created a new body for Arthur and reanimated him as Drax the Destroyer, while his daughter Heather was sent to the planet Titan and trained to unlock her latent psychic powers. Seems like kind of a needlessly complicated solution to me, but what do I know? I'm not an Eternal. During this training, Heather came into contact with an entity known as the Dragon of the Moon, which then took hold inside her mind. Heather then went to Earth, where she became a member of the Avengers and was even briefly the holder of the Mind Gem. And then, much later, she became a member of the Guardians of the Galaxy along with her revived father, Drax. Being directly related to a current Guardians member, she could be a good link between the old and the new, even if her powers are practically the exact opposite of her father's. Or actually more like because of that. I do always like to see some character contrast. Every superhero needs an edgy doppelganger, and that goes for silly-looking space raccoons too. In Rocket's case, that edgier double is named Blackjack O'Hare, who goes where no ordinary rabbit would dare. Oh, oops. That's the wrong franchise. Man, if I had a nickel for every green space bunny. Hailing from Rocket's home planet Half-World, Blackjack is a badass cyborg body mercenary who has been Rocket's most recurring enemy/rival ever since the 1980s. Usually they end up fighting each other because Rocket is screwing up whatever shady job Blackjack has taken at the time, but in good old rival fashion, Blackjack isn't opposed to teaming up with Rocket if their goals align. To him, it's all about the paycheck. And as a character, he could definitely be fun as an even scruffier, cruder replacement for good old Rocket. By the way, did anyone else play Jazz Jackrabbit as a kid, or did I just make myself look 1,000 years old on YouTube? I did, didn't I? Aw, man. Well, at least I have 3 nickels. Okay, so this next entry is actually confirmed to be appearing in Guardians 3, but I just have to talk about it. After all, the Guardians are going to need a new mascot now that the world has moved past Baby and Teen Groot, and who better to fill the role than one of the best doggies in all of Marvel? Cosmo. Continuing the proud tradition of launching cute little animals into space, Cosmo was just a regular doggy who the Soviet Union figured would make a great astronaut back in the 1960s. That is until the spacecraft managed to drift off to nowhere, which is a huge city built inside the decayed head of a decapitated Celestial. Having been mutated by cosmic rays during the trip all Fantastic Four style, Cosmo not only gained intelligence but also a slew of psychic powers, such as telekinesis, telepathy, psionic blasts. He's a regular little tail-wagging Jean Grey, this one. Oh yeah, Cosmo is male in the comics, by the way. As for Cosmo's status as a potential team mascot, we once again have a really fun potential for contrast here. Where Groot was part of the muscle of the team and spoke only a few words, Cosmo is a well-spoken telepath and often takes the role of mission control in the comics. An adorable mission control that the team would only have to pay in ear scratches and chew toys. I see this as an absolute win. Oh wow, I only barely even talked about the original team. Well, that just goes to show that Marvel Space is chock full of wacky characters that can no doubt fill the void that our beloved team will leave. Although I do kinda wonder if their musical taste is gonna take a hit. No more Hooked on a Feeling for us, I guess.